Harriet Tubman, the most is of her people. If you hear the dogs, keep going. If you see the torches in the woods, keep going. If they're shouting, keep going. Don't ever stop. If you want a taste of freedom, keep going.
Harriet Arminta Ross Tubman, born into slavery in 1822 in Dorchester County, Maryland, with 11 siblings and 2 enslaved parents, Harriet and Benjamin Ross. At the age of 6, she was a legal worker. Therefore, her master, Edward Broadus, lent her to a couple to help weave. This couple was very harsh toward Arminta. They whipped her often, leaving painful scars on her back. And when she slacked off, they made her check the muskrat traps, and she would get the measles. After a while, she was sent back to Broadus, who lent her to a woman as a babysitter and a housekeeper. This was a very demanding job for a young girl, as she had to stay up all night watching her owner's young one, and if Arminta was caught sleeping or the baby crying, she would be beaten. Once again, she was sent back to Broadus after eating one of the lady's sugar cubes. Arminta was passed on to many owners and beaten frequently. At the age of 11, she was no longer a child. Therefore, she wore a bright bandana. She also gained her mother's name, Harriet, but at the age of 12, she experienced a life-scarring blow to the head when her master asked her to whip another slave for going to the market without permission, but she refused. And as the other slave was in the middle of running away, an iron brick was thrown and accidentally hit Harriet. It almost crushed her skull, leaving an extremely deep scar on her head. She was left unconscious for 3 days and would have serious seizures for the rest of her life. Harriet, in excruciating pain, saw how unfair slaves were being treated and thought day and night about escaping.
At the age of 25, 1844, Harriet married John Tubman, a free black man who was born and raised in Dorchester County. When they married, Harriet moved in with her husband, still holding on to her dream of escaping. Every night, Harriet would tell her husband about her dream of running to the north and being free. However, because Harriet's husband was already a free man, he didn't follow her dreams, and told her that he would tell her master if she escaped. Harriet did not believe him, but when she saw the look on his face, she knew he was serious. He did not want to lose the freedom he already had. So instead of running free with her husband one night, when he was asleep, Harriet decided to follow the path of freedom she had been dreaming about her whole life. Before she left, she gathered her 2 brothers, Henry and Ben, who unfortunately changed their minds and headed back to the plantation. So she left without them, deciding to come back and rescue her family another day. Just like other slaves, such as Frederick Douglass, Harriet followed the North Star to guide her to freedom. When I found I had crossed that line, I looked at my hand to see if I was the same person. There was such a glory over everything. The sun came like gold through the trees and over the fields, and I felt like I was in heaven. It was what she felt like when she was finally free. But being free wasn't enough for her. There was no one there to greet her, and she was all alone. So she went back south 19 times in a course of 10 years and freed friends and family using the Underground Railroad.
The Underground Railroad was a secret network of houses, paths, and routes used by slaves to escape to the north, the free states of the U.S. and Canada. With abolitionists, pastors, and people who were against slavery leading it, they provided safe houses with hidden beds, food, and instructions on where to go next. The residents would put a light in the window or hang a quilt to show that it was a safe house or what to do next, using signs like monkey wrench, North Star, flying geese, and log cabin, just to name a few, and everyone having their own special meaning, like log cabin, a safe house, and flying geese meant to follow the migrating geese up north. After 10 years, she freed 300 slaves and said, "I could have freed hundreds more if they only knew they were slaves."
And after 10 years of extreme danger, 10 years of freeing slaves, the Civil War started.
When the Civil War started on April 12, 1861, Tubman worked in the Union Army as a cook, a nurse, and a spy. Her experience leading slaves on the Underground Railroad was especially helpful, as she knew all the routes and paths from the north to the south. Tubman took groups of slaves to hunt down rebel camps and burning plantations. But not only working in the fields, Harriet was a nurse. She helped and healed. Many in the hospital died from dysentery, a disease involving lots of diarrhea that only herbs, roots, and plants could heal at the time, like the ones that she used as a child in Maryland. So, one night she went out looking, and finding water lilies that she boiled and served to a man in the middle of dying. And sure enough, he recovered.
Harriet healed many people, and once the Civil War had finished, Tubman moved to Auburn, New York to help her parents physically and financially. But her mom and dad were weak and frail, and they passed away because of old age. Her father in 1871, and her mother in 1880. Harriet decided to help former slaves, and so she opened a shelter, providing food for those who were in need. And after helping so many people, she was penniless and had no money to support herself. The only money she had was from selling her gardening, but that wasn't a lot. Sadly, Harriet was diagnosed with pneumonia, a lung inflammation caused by unwanted bacteria or fungi, making the air sacs fill up with pus and potentially become solid. At the age of 91, on March 10th, 1913, she passed away.
Harriet Tubman lived a long life. She was a strong, courageous, and kind woman that only wanted freedom for her and her people. She will always be remembered for her braveness and how she fought for freedom.